All right, I'd like to call our meeting to order and take this opportunity to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. And roll call, members of council are present and accounted for. And I did not have a closed meeting to report this evening. So I'll call upon members of council and certainly administration or audience for a moment of silence, and then we'll rise for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From
All right, we acknowledge that we are in the land and surrounded by water originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, Potawatomi, Huron-Wendat, and the Caldwell First Nation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all our First Nations, Inuit and Métis. To the members, any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Hearing none, we'll have that duly noted. Thank you. Move on to the minutes of the regular council meeting of May 9th, 2023, and our special council meeting of May the 8th. If I have a motion on those minutes, moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councillor Houston. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Those minutes are carried. I don't think we have any supplementary to deal with this evening. First and foremost, we have one delegation, and with us, it's in regards to the Court Festival 2023. We have Robert Drake and Monica Mescadere from the Optimist Club of St. Clair Beach. And while they're coming up, we do have a report on the agenda this evening. If I could have a motion to move the report forward. Councillor Higginson, Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Good evening. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'll just say a real quick about the Optimist Club. So we're a non-profit service group that works in the Tecumseh and surrounding area. We tend to organize events for youth and adults. We also support youth activities, youth development, and we also help local charities by providing financial support and assist them with fundraising opportunities. So we were approached in November of 2022 by the Community and Recreation Services to consider taking over running of the Corn Festival, which was last held in 2019. So we host events, as I mentioned, for both youth and adults over many years. We have events like the Easter event, Victoria Day Fireworks, which was just this past weekend, Fishing Derby. We do the Taste of Tecumseh Food Festival and also Halloween Trunk or Treat. In terms of relevant experience, the Taste of Tecumseh is probably our most relevant event. We have 5,000 people attend over 2 days, where we have music, food, and also alcohol being served. So we feel that there's a strong interest from the community to have the Corn Festival return. We also feel that a pared down event would not be well received. So we want to sort of honor the tradition of the Corn Festival, but also try and modernize it, bring it up to date, and sort of appeal to many different age groups. In particular, we want to refocus on local content, really bring back local music, art, food, and vendors to the event. Next. So we want to rebrand the Corn Fest slightly to the Tecumseh Corn and Music Festival. This would be a 3-day event at Lacoste Park. There would be 2 main components: the Midway Festival event, which would be similar to an event in the past. We would have a midway, we would have food, corn cooking, different types of demonstrations throughout the day, high quality art and local vendors. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, August 25, 26, 27, noon to 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and then noon to 5 p.m. on the Sunday. This is the same weekend it's always been historically. It's the weekend prior to Labor Day. So in addition to this Midway Festival, we'd also like to have a music festival component that would be within the grounds. This would be a 19+ event, which would have multiple local music acts in addition to a beer garden. And that would run Friday and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. Next. So we plan on basically gating, fencing the entire front part of Lacoste Park. This is mainly for security so that we can keep out unwanted items such as alcohol, dogs, bikes, weapons, etc. Next. This is a layout of the festival grounds. So in the south of the park here on the light green area, you can see where the Midway would go, which would have all your rides and your Midway games. We'll also do the traditional corn cooking that the Optimist Club has actually done in many years prior. We cooked like 5,000 plus cobs of corn that we give out to that people can purchase. We'll also have a food area with food trucks. We're going to have large tents that will contain art or vendors. Having the large tents means that it can go rain or shine. You don't have to worry about rain. You can still run the event. People will be able to still enjoy it. We're going to have a kid zone with bouncy castles, a corn maze, a demonstration area, for example, agility dogs, these sort of fun things that people can look at throughout the day. Next. Okay, so the music festival component, as I said, we really want to highlight local talent. So these are a few of the local acts that we've already engaged that are willing to participate. We're focusing on bands that actually have their own music. So all these bands put out music and have their own albums, so we can kind of highlight music from this area. Next. Okay, so our plan is to make admission to the main festival grounds free, if budget allows, and that's the hope. We'll use the money that we bring in from the music festival grounds, which would be $15 per night. These would be pre-sold tickets, concert style. You'd buy a ticket for the Friday night or the Saturday night so that you can attend. And so we use those profits to be able to hopefully make the front gate free. We operate our typical expenses for an event like, for example, Taste of Tecumseh, it's about $60,000 for us to put on that event. This is a little bit more, but it's about $80,000 we feel. Given that budget constraints, we would make this 100% a volunteer staffed event. Next. Okay, so this is just to give an idea of the sort of the volunteers that we know we require. These are in shifts, so a shift's roughly 6 hours. So there's upwards of 220 odd volunteer shifts. Most volunteers will take 1 or 2 shifts, so we can usually probably have around 120 volunteers. To put it in perspective, we typically have about 80 volunteers at the Taste of Tecumseh. So it's an incremental amount, but something that we definitely can handle as a club. So there's 3 main areas that we have to staff volunteers. Of course, the main festival area, the music festival, and then the corn cooking area where we're cooking the corn. A lot of this is actually garbage cleanup. You can see that there's 10 people just working full time throughout the park, walking around, collecting up garbage. Next. So we are coming to you with some in-kind requests from the town. In particular, we would like some help with putting up the fencing. Again, it's a bit of a task, but also we think it's probably a wise thing to do so we can control entry to the grounds and make the space safe and secure. We are asking that the park usage fees do get waived for this event. We do pay park usage fees at other events, such as the Taste of Tecumseh, but the Taste of Tecumseh is a fundraising event that we have a very good handle on, and we actually do generate profit, quite significant profit off that, in order to feed back into our programs and our events, and also for donation to other community partners. I've submitted a budget also, which you can see there is not a large profit to be made off this event. We do run some of our events at zero profit. Like we do the fireworks, for example, that's basically run sort of as a net zero event, the fishing derby. So some of our events we try and raise money, and other ones we don't. And this one, there just isn't the budget to sort of look at it as a fundraiser. But the more that help we can get, the better we can make sure that we don't go over budget. So we also could do with some help putting up the corn mage, and there is a small stage, I think, at the golf club over at Lakewood that we could make probably good use of. So there's a few other requests that I think were fairly minor that Artie's Parks, I think, sort of supported them. Next. Okay, so that's really, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Or
I was going to ask if you're going to take a deep breath there.
Not a problem.
Go ahead, Councilor Tonio.
First of all, great presentation. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Monica. Thanks for bringing it back, or possibly bringing it back. The residents like it. I like how you're doing it. It's not a big fundraiser. It's more of an event for our community. The parade, obviously, this is not a question to you. I guess it's a parade to us. Is it something that we want to continue the parade, or is that going to be part of this, or is that not a topic of concern, the parade part? Because I know a lot of people enjoy the parade as part of the Corn Fest.
So I could just address it quickly, that we feel that the cost for the parade for us to put on at the moment is not a risk we can take given the budgeting costs, but I would pass it to staff to maybe see what the interest is from the town side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Tonio. Staff have not indicated support for a parade. We don't have the capacity or the capability at this juncture to support a parade. And we are interested in making sure that Corncella is successful in its reboot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And second question, if it's okay. The food trucks, will they be feeding both areas, or will there be different foods in different areas?
So with a wristband, you'd be able to come in and out of the music area. So you could leave to get your food and bring it back in.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Jobin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation and for your efforts and the rebranding. I just recall some of the hardships in the past was the fees at the door. So seeing that you're operating it within your own purse, per se, with your beer tent to help float your expenses, that's amazing. And that you have the volunteers and the capacity to sustain the entire event, because that was another issue that was being faced prior to, was actually having to pay volunteers. So I appreciate your efforts and the rebranding of this, and I do wish it great success. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Houston. Okay.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Rob and Monica. As you know, this festival is a huge undertaking, and for the Optimist Club to step up, I know the town really appreciates that. The public, the community really wants these type of summer festivals in Tecumseh. I know I was fortunate to attend the Festival Events Ontario with Miss Katrina back there as part of the park staff, and a lot of communities, a lot of municipalities do participate in putting these events on. So I want to thank Beth and her team for this transition, because it's not easy. And you're going in this blindfolded in terms of what it's going to look like. You have no idea. It's your first year. And I want to thank the town and the administration for helping as much as they can moving forward in this regard. So there's going to be a lot of unknowns. Pray for the good weather. I know when we put this on, the mayor and myself and Councillor Jobin, Councillor Houston, even Councillor Tony, I don't know if you were on, but we were on when we had the Cornfest committee, and it was a lot of planning, a lot of nervousness leading up to it. But again, it will come together. I know the town will be here. You're basically putting this event on for everyone to enjoy. So I want to thank you for that. The question I have is, I know administration, maybe to you, Beth, there is no parking, on-site parking at this event, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is some limited parking Deputy Mayor, for this event on site. At this point, we're still trying to work with some of the other users to determine what the exact scope of parking will be. But it is the plan to have less on grass parking than there has been in previous years for this event. So there will be some limited parking. Like some of the other events, we are recommending to people to encourage those who have special accessibility requirements for people to consider those as being primary park users for these types of special spaces, as well as families with kids and strollers and things of that nature. But at this juncture, there's limited parking on site.
For sure, I appreciate that. And I know it's a revenue producer and, throwing out numbers, $5 a vehicle, it was a good chunk of the budget that the town at the time was able to receive from parking. The other question was in terms of the end time of 11 p.m. Again, you're charging $15 for the beer garden. Is it just beer or is it you're going to serve alcohol? Is it obviously restricted 19 and older event?
Yeah,
So,
we'll probably partner with Hiram Walkers.
okay.
They'll be doing the alcohol, like an alcohol and wine service, and then we'll have a couple of breweries as well.
Okay, so the question then in terms of the end time of 11 p.m., I know Taste of Tecumseh goes till 1. Is there maybe through administration a rationale of why one's 11, one's allowed till 1, and it's the same group? That's why I'm kind of confused on.
Sure. Through Mr. Mayor to the deputy, we really thought in our conversations with the club that it would be good for us to make sure that they could be in what we're calling the success zone for this event, and to not bite off more than they can chew or we can chew for a reboot of this event. We know how important the history is of the Corn Festival to the town of Tecumseh and its residents. And we really wanted to make sure that this event could be successful, be able to be managed by the volunteers. As you've heard from our colleagues here at the Optimist Club, there is a requirement for more volunteers for this event from Taste of Tecumseh, for example. So we wanted to make sure that this would be successful. Also understanding that this is a reintroduction of music into the park for those residents who neighbor this park. And we're very mindful and aware of noise concerns that happen with regard to anything that happens at Lacoste Park currently. So again, we're wanting to make sure that we can do this event successfully and within a frame that's going to make sense.
I appreciate that. And I think the key word is manageable. Being you as a club taking this on, finishing at 11, I know you'll be there probably till midnight by the time everything clears. So again, if you are going till 1, you're probably till 2. And if these volunteers are not being paid, you need their resources, you need their bodies for the next day. So I appreciate that. And I think it's a learning curve for the first year. But again, very thankful that you are able to step up to be able to put this on.
Go ahead and then.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you to Rob and Monica and to the entire club for stepping up to put this back on. As I know, it's a cherished event within the community, and I wish you all the success. I do have two questions. So just curious about the use of the pickleball courts throughout the event or during the times of the event are. I'm just curious to administration how we will manage that or in the expectation with the pickleball users and the Cornfest, which is going on.
Okay, I can answer that one
Go ahead,
through your worship, through to Councillor Houston. We've had some initial discussions with the pickleball club. As it is set up right now, the outside fencing would still give access through I believe it's the east entrance gates there. So there would still be access to those pickleball courts during that time. So we've had some initial discussions with the Pickleball Association to maybe use those times, maybe at a scaled down, schedule what they normally use. So they would still be open during that time and they wouldn't have to go through the main gates of the festival to get to those courts. So and then they also understand that parking would be extremely limited. Active transportation would be encouraged to those courts.
Thank you. I think it'd be a great opportunity for the first annual Coachella pickleball champion. So there might be an opportunity with the pickleball club to do something. And the other question I have, partly to the club and maybe to administration, in your presentation, there was a couple of additional asks of, I think the stage and things like that. Not seeing any of that here in the report. So I don't know if it's appropriate to delegate any of that authority for those two the director, or I just didn't see any of those specific asks in the presentation in the report.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Houston, we've discussed those asks. We consider them to be quite minor and more than able to be supported and well within our capacity and capability to do so. So when we were thinking about the item in the report, park staffing cost estimated at $3,500, some of that does include setting up the corn maze, the provision or setting up of the stage, in addition to setting up the fencing. So that was a high overhead cost projected around some of those items that Rob and Monica have presented.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm certainly in favor of supporting the event, doing what we can to, make sure that the first year is as successful as it can be, as a learning experience and bringing it back. So again, I wish you all the success, and I'm happy to move the report when appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Houston. Councillor Higginson.
Thanks very much. And through you, I'm very excited. I live a stone's throw from Lacoste Park, and I was particularly very interested in seeing your focus on local and thinking about when I'm not in the park, I'll be able to hear those local bands from my back porch, which is really great. In terms of the local food, local vendors, local artists, things like that, what is your kind of outreach to be able to solicit those local talents to come in to occupy that space in there?
Okay, I can talk to that. So a lot of our food trucks I've actually been in contact with because of the Taste of Tecumseh. So for example, we have Nona's Pizza. We have a couple of people who are integral to the community that we've invited back to participate in this event. And for vendors, we have a team who has been going out to a lot of the markets, for example, in Walkerville, like downtown. There's one that gets hosted at the Slinky's parking lot. So we've been reaching out to those people who are already in the community.
That's great. I really appreciate that. I know when I was knocking on doors, of course, Corn Fest was a big thing that came up, and that was one of the pieces that people really wanted to see. So congratulations on kind of reaching that goal year one. I noticed in your budget as well that there's a pretty healthy budget for security, which I appreciate. As soon as you add the element of the music fest of Cornchella, there is that little extra piece. So I appreciate that healthy budget there. And I noticed in there that you're also looking for some smaller forms of volunteers for security at maybe the main entrances. Is there, noting that high schoolers have to have 40 hours of community service, and that this might be a great way for them to get some of those hours. Is there ways to slot younger aged high schoolers into some of those volunteer spots, noting that they probably wouldn't be doing security, although some of those guys are bigger than me, and all of them are, and they might be actually formidable, but are there opportunities for local high school students, let's say, to take advantage of those volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, definitely outside of not in the music festival, obviously that's 19 and up, but yeah, outside we've already started to engage to try and bring teenagers, especially people who need their hours. Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
Well, congratulations. I'm super excited about it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I can attest, Robert, you're out soliciting sponsorships, and I bumped into you the other day. And so I know he's out there knocking on doors and heavily. The Optimist Club has a great reputation in the region, in particular ours here, and the relationship that we've always had with the community over many, many years. And I see this as a success, and I don't want to jinx it for you, only because I think when we had a bit of a lapse on the wine festival, or the Art of Eating at the time it was called, and it took it over and with very, very short period of time turned it around, and it was a great success, and it's been certainly a great success since then, and so forth. Obviously the security piece, obviously, because now you've got alcohol in the area, and I'm sure you've had a conversation with our local OPP as well, and so in that regards, to keep things, I guess, in a secure manner. I think the municipality I think is there. We've seen it from our director in terms of, you know, a lot of in-kind type support for the festival to be certainly successful in that. And it's not a huge ask, certainly in that regards. And so I want to commend yourself, your leadership, and certainly the club for coming forward. And the beauty of it all is that money raised in the community usually stays in the community, and which is good news. So certainly I fully support your venture. I wish you all the best and success in your endeavor, and certainly looking forward to eating corn again at the tail end of the year. And so I'm sure you've made your contacts with Bonduel, well, not Bonduel, now North Team, Norterra, and in that regards, I'm sure they're going to be great, continue to be great supporters in providing that great Dal maize corn that we're so famous for. So if there's no further questions or certainly comments at this stage here, then I'll the report's been moved forward. And Councillor Houston, you're moving the report, and then supported by Councillor Higginson. And on from that, on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimous. All the best.
Thank you.
And on another note, you're more than welcome to stay till the end of our meeting, but I understand if you want to be excused. There you go. Okay, move back to communications. Members of council, we have two items. If I could have a motion to receive, Councillor Tonio and Councillor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. On those two items, anything that members of council want to bring forward? If not, then we'll move to committee minutes. We have the minutes of the quarter revision of April 25th on the 11th concession drain. Moved by Councillor Higginson, Councillor Dorner support. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We've dealt with report 1A, so we'll move on to report number 2, our development services, DS 2310, the development agreement of Castlegate Towers, Inc., a business park development. And I believe our director will bring that report forward, also with our manager as well, Mr. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to council. In the audience is Zach Habib. He's one of the many parties who represent, I'll just call it the Habib family, who are owners of the development and have an interest in this, of course. So I just wanted to make sure he was identified. Mr. Mayor, the report in front of council, if we go to attachment 1, please, of the report, this is affecting a 71-acre parcel of land at the northeast corner of 8th Concession Road and County Road 46 intersection, outlined in red on the air photo. This is an area that, as you will see on attachment 2, comprises five blocks that are intended for the purposes of business park uses. Serviced through an interior road that would be constructed to the town's satisfaction by the owners in conjunction and in accordance with the development agreement that is attached and the subject of this meeting or this report. You'll also see at the southeast corner of the property an area identified as a block, which on the former drawing was a woodlot. The intent is that that area would be an identifiable block, the consequence of which we'll speak to later in the report. And at the northeast corner of the property is a stormwater management facility that will serve all of the stormwater management needs of the property and ultimately would become part of the municipality's infrastructure. In 2018, a draft plan approval was granted by the county, which is the approval authority. Shortly thereafter, work commenced on bringing forward an agreement to council, and that led to some issues around stormwater management. The prior owner decided to sit on the development for a period of time. The new owner acquired the land and asked for an extension in 2021 for the draft plan of subdivision approval. Draft plans are typically granted for 3-year periods because once you have draft plan approval, you basically have acquired rights to that property to sanitary sewage capacity. So the Planning Act establishes that it's granted in periods of time that lapse, and upon request can be extended. You'll recall a report was brought forward to council, and council endorsed an extension of that draft plan of subdivision. This evening, the matter is really with respect to the specifics of how the site will development, and the controlling mechanism the municipality uses is one of the conditions of draft plan approval, the preparation of a development agreement. Our solicitor in this case, Mr. Ed Hooker, was working on it for quite a period of time with direction from senior town administration, including primarily engineering and planning. Pardon me. And the intent of a development agreement is really to establish the municipal infrastructure that's to be constructed, including sanitary, storm, water, sidewalks, berming, tree plantings, et cetera, and to ensure that sufficient performance security is provided to ensure the satisfactory completion of the required works. These are all works that ultimately will be inherited by the municipality and will become part of our infrastructure. A number of interesting components to this one that are included in the development agreement that might be slightly different from some of the normal provisions. For an industrial development, we have the interior roads running east and west from the 8th and one connecting down to 46 as a sidewalk on each side of the road. As well, there's an off-site sidewalk connected from the east-west road down to County Road 46. You'll recall 46 in the future will be under the subject of a Class EA, and the thought is widening probably. So infrastructure for active transportation will be contemplated at that time. The installation of LED streetlights, a landscape berm will extend across the entire flankage that is will divide the site from County Road 46. So if you can envision along Highway 3, Phase and Drive, between the public highway and the rear yards of development, it's a landscape berm, something very similar here with the planting of 140 deciduous trees, which are detailed in the agreement. Stormwater management pond at the northeast corner, as I referenced, all has been subject to review by town and IRCA. Contribution of just over $100,000 for cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the provisions contained in the Planning Act. Planting of boulevard trees along both sides of the new interior municipal roads, and the requirement for a conservation easement, which has been prepared, that will be registered on title for the preservation of the existing woodlot. This property is currently zoned holding business park BP in accordance with the official plan. It is timely to consider a removal of the H subject to the registration of the agreement, its execution first, and its registration on title. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I did make reference to a cash contribution for parkland dedications. Development charges will apply to the site. Those are collected by the municipality at the time of issuance of a building permit. So the recommendation from administration is that the report be received, that a bylaw authorizing execution of the agreement, which is attached to the report, which allows for the development of the 5 business park lots for business park uses, be adopted, subject to the owner executing the development agreement. The owner has in fact executed the development agreement, and so the bylaw is on the agenda for consideration of passage later in the evening. And further, that the execution of such further documents as are called for by the development agreement fundamentally be granted to the mayor and clerk, and that a notice of intent to pass the bylaw to remove the holding symbol in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act to put the land from a holding business park zone to a business park zone upon execution of the agreement by the owner and its registration in accordance to permit the development of the business park in accordance with this report be authorized. So, Mr. Mayor, that's a summary of the report. If there's any questions, happy to take those.
Well, before I ask members of council as well, is that this is really timely for us here with what's happening in the region, in particular, a lot of industrial inquiries, in terms of those lands. So I certainly want to commend the Abib family for bringing this forward in such a timely fashion. And I think that with the the report that has been brought forward by our director is certainly in order, and then I think a full recommendation to support that that development, I think is appropriate at this time. So again, I want to commend the Heavy family for that. Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Worship. Just on the heels of what you just mentioned, when we have, developments like this, which are, coming online or very close to it, do we, share this with Invest Windsor Essex? Do we, pass that along so they are aware if they have not sold the entire block yet, that we share that?
They are certainly aware of it, and I'm sure the Beebe family are actively marketing these properties as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Higginson.
Thank you. Through you, not really a question, but I'm glad, Mr. Hillman, that you pointed it out. I really appreciate the addition of sidewalks and trees. In a business park, it's not really a thing that you think about. So I appreciate that that's we're thinking about it as something that people may walk through, people that work there, and it may be a more attractive place for businesses for that. And certainly an attractive place to be able to take a walk during work. So I just wanted to say that I think that's a great standard that we have there, and I appreciate that that's in that was included.
Go ahead, Mr. Hillman.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, just really appreciate those comments. Council, through the official plan itself and through certain declarations, has made it very clear, in addition to the aesthetic value, the planting of trees along active transportation corridors really heightens the opportunity for using those during our, particularly our summer months. There are climate change benefits to it. And we really do see this as an area that is amenable to future transit. And with transit, say the word right, with transit comes the need to make sure people can walk to transit stops. So that's all part of the incremental growth of those systems as well.
Yeah, and just add to that is basically this is setting the benchmark for any type of business park development, not only in our community, but certainly in the region. And so again, commend, developer for agreeing to that. Councillor Jobin.
Yes, and thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. On the heels of everything that has been said, also just maintaining the green space and the beautification is complementary to the residential component in the area still, and the history of that wooded lot. So I do appreciate that as well for the community, and welcome.
Any further questions or comments on this stage? But I'm willing now to move the report. Councillor Higginson and Councillor Houston on the report. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous. Okay. This one? Oh.
Sounds good.
Okay, this one's done. Do you want to on the business part?
No, not on the business part, on the court.
Oh, okay. You want me to bring that back?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So this one's fine.
This one's done.
Yep. So before we go to the next one. You did, but you actually raised a point that I realized now wasn't in the report, and I wanted to go back and address it. I think if Mr. Clerk will allow me a very small and favorable
window.
recommendation, that would be good.
Okay.
Other recommendations were moved already.
Yes.
The remainder of the recommendations were moved. So it's just
So-
an additional item.
Pardon me?
It's just an additional item. All the other.
I beg your indulgence, members of council, in that if we go back to report number 1A on the Corn Festival piece, if we could have a motion to bring that report back again. Councillor Houston move and Councillor Tonio support. In favor? Oppose, if any? That is carried.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Madam CEO.
Thank you. Apologies for missing this the first go around, and it was a comment that Councillor Houston made that triggered me to look at this again. And if I could ask for an amendment, minor amendment to the first part of the recommendation. Sorry, over here. Let me get the right report in front of me. Okay. Actually, the second part, and that council give favorable consideration to the request from the Optimist Club of St. Clair Beach to waive the associated fees for the use of Lacoste Park. And I would like council's indulgence to add the words as well as the in-kind support outlined in report CRS 2023-09 for the 2023 Tecumseh Corn and Music Festival. That would permit the in-kind contributions that are outlined in the report to be authorized to be part of the town's contribution. Thank you.
So you're okay, not remove, but removing the recommendation. As
Yep,
amended.
as amended, I'm happy to support.
All right, thank you. And I'll go back to the seconder on that. They're okay on that as amended? As amended, all in favor? Oppose? That is carried. We'll move on to item 2B. It's the DS 2311 zoning bylaw amendment, Petcon Realty Corporation. That's the south side of County Road 22, scheduling for a public meeting. Mr. Hillman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we go to attachment number 1, please, to the report. An application has been filed for a just under 17-acre parcel of land, which is the yellow hatched mark on the image that is shown. So just for context, south side of County Road 22, as a reference point, Subaru is just to the east of the yellow hatched area, the dealership. And you can see the Les Bronx Road and County Road 22 intersection just to the northwest of the property. The land holding is actually a larger piece that extends to the south, and it's outlined in red. The application is only with respect to the hatched area in yellow, which corresponds to a general commercial designation in the official plan. If we go to attachment 2, please. So the rezoning application that has been filed is to take the land from an agricultural zone, a defined area right now that just restricts the type of agricultural uses, and places it into a site-specific commercial zone that would allow a 142-room 5-story hotel, perhaps up to 6 stories. It would be on the eastern portion of the subject property, as is shown on the image. The hotel, and this is a preliminary site plan for the benefit of council, but it helps to visualize the scope and scale of the development that's proposed. In addition, there would be a small commercial pad just on the westerly, unfortunately, the bottom image, the yellow. So north is projecting to the left side. That's not all cartographic rules are always met, but we do our best depending on how the drawings come to us. A little debate in the office on this one, but here's how it came out. So you can see that the site is fully developed for commercial uses. The extent is that access to the site would come on the interim basis from the easterly terminus of Sylvester Drive, which is just off the top of the image. We'll see in another image shortly. It's in the future, the broader development of the Manning Road secondary plan area, which would include the Westlake Drive extension. If we just go back to attachment 1, please, for a moment, it would actually extend across the full front of this property. So Westlake one day is intended, in accordance with various studies, to extend and connect easterly from its current terminus all the way over to Sylvester Drive to complete an integrated and complete road network in this area. In addition, the concept has roughly just over 200 on-site parking spaces. There would be loading areas, landscaping, et cetera. If we just go to attachment 3, please, it's just a preliminary visualization of what the site could look like with some very nice vehicles in the parking lot. But scope and scale, I think you're all familiar with a similar hotel, which is just across in the Amy Croft area. That sort of scale of development is what's anticipated. And in fact, the same owner, Mr. Petretta, is involved with this file, and he was involved with that one as well. The report goes on to discuss the surrounding land uses. Generally, you'll know that there's a highway to the north, beyond which are residential uses, automotive to the east, and identification of residential uses to the south. The commercial designation does continue if you extend to the east. So if we go to attachment 3, please, or 4, please, you can see those are the land uses that are currently in effect. Next attachment, please. And if we just go down to the zoom area, red represents commercial, yellow residential, blue business park. In addition to the application for rezoning, and after discussion with the county and staff, a traffic impact letter was prepared by a qualified consultant to support the development. In essence, the intent was to look at the operation of the road network on the with the proposal, not considering what improvements need to be done in terms of timing of Westlake extension and the scope and scale of that extension, but really could the site operate with existing road conditions prevailing until other more complex issues are really worked out. And it was found through the analysis that in fact the road network is sufficient to support the development by accessing exclusively off the east and west end of Sylvester Drive, the cul-de-sac bulb. Considerable discussions with the county, and I must say we were pleased the county was very engaged on this file and really saw the value in allowing a limited amount of development to proceed under the current circumstances. And you'll see that the traffic impact letter and the position of the county and our discussions with developers in the area is that this can proceed subject to future developments having a scoped traffic impact study to determine at what time significant pieces of road network need to be included. So the timing of the Westlake connection will be the subject of further study. In the interim, there are connection opportunities to Manning, and in fact, other lands in this area could develop, provided they make connections out to Manning Road, subject to further traffic study and a conversation with the county around the timing of Westlake, because they need that as part of their ultimate solution at Westlake, as you will recall. So no conclusions on that yet, and that road won't at this time extend. We do make mention to comments on the provincial policy statement, the County of Essex official plan, the Tecumseh official plan. Our review of all those documents is that this proposal, this request for rezoning at this time would be in conformity consistent with those documents. Finally, the report reviews the fact that the official plan for the town does include a number of matters that should be considered as part of a rezoning, degree of conformity with the general intent philosophy of the plan, the suitability of the land, the compatibility of the proposal, the ability of infrastructure to accommodate it, adequacy of the transportation system. And our preliminary review is that this proposed rezoning does meet those requirements. After the public meeting, when further stakeholder input is provided, we can provide greater detail on any one of those if deemed necessary. On the issue of municipal services, this development will be on full municipal services. It's noted that the development is within an area that's subject to two critical policy regulatory documents, fundamentally: the Manning Road Secondary Plan Area, Stormwater Management Class EA, the addendum that was adopted by council in December 2014. And it fundamentally says that land within this planning district will send its stormwater to a pond, stormwater facility at the south end of the planning district. And that'll be a piece of municipal infrastructure to deal with quantity and quality control for the development of lands. The second is that the town of Tecumseh's functional servicing report is in draft and has been released for review by some of the owners. And so we're having regard to that document as well in the review of this rezoning process. The infrastructure necessary to facilitate the development is currently not in place in accordance precisely with those documents, but there is sufficient municipal infrastructure in the vicinity that it can support the interim development of the site, with the understanding that once the long-term infrastructure is available, whether it be the pond or the trunk to the pond or the sanitary sewer across the front of the property, once those services are available, the site will have to hook into them. Those details will be worked out through a site plan process, an agreement that will be registered on title. And I would also add that given the time it will take to evaluate the options, it may be that some of the longer term infrastructure solutions, for example, a sanitary sewer along Westlake Drive, may in fact become the solution that is most advantageous. As we indicated, the property has developable lands to the south across this future extension of the road, and other owners in the area are aware of the circumstance. So there could very well be benefit to some of the longer term solutions coming forward. Either way, we're confident that there is a reasonable servicing, there are servicing solutions available to the site that will place it on full municipal services, and that can over time either incrementally or ultimately connect to the long-term vision for that area. And the site plan agreement would vet those. Finally, just to be clear, additional planning approvals of site plan control would be required for the site, thereby meaning an agreement to detail all nature of site development, including any extension or off-site servicing requirements that may flow with this development. So ultimately, Mr. Mayor, we do have a recommendation, which is that the report be received. And at this time that we schedule a public meeting for June 27th at 6:30 for consideration of input from all stakeholders. And that's really the presentation at this time, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
I have two questions. One, I think Mr. Bartnick will be able to maybe answer quickly in that. But the other is now with the requirement coming from Westlake and that. So all those lands have been, there was an issue of Westlake, obviously, not only that we're dealing with the final development from the county's perspective, but also a landowner issue. So that's bypassed now. And so they've got the access right to their site from Westlake. Or no, sorry, from Manning and Sylvester Drive.
So you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, to be clear, that is correct. The interim solution would be sufficient from Sylvester, access from 22, and leave through Manning with 3 connection points currently to Manning Road, ultimately just 2.
And my question to Mr. Bartnick, I know that in the future, and that with especially with what's going to be happening on Manning Road with the expansion with the county and all the activity that's happening and the land build that's there, it almost looks like they're getting ready for the overpass. But I know that we were looking at putting a trunk water main through that area. And if that's still in the plans, and now with this type of development here, is there an alternative to get water to that trunk through these lands without waiting for the county and so forth and dealing with that trunk water main that's going down Manning?
Yes, Your Worship. So the plan put forward for the trunk water main, as per the wastewater master plan, is to install a 400 diameter water main down Manning Road, I believe from County Road 22 down to County Road 42. The interim solution for water main would be to extend the local water main on Sylvester Drive westerly. There are plans that once though the Westlake extension right away does open up, there is an opportunity to not only install the ultimate trunk sanitary sewer, but also the ultimate local water main, which would be much larger than a 6-inch. I think it's approximately perhaps a 10-inch or a 12-inch pipe. But as far as trying to reroute the trunk, through these lands or perhaps further to the west than Manning, I think there'd be some challenges there with that. And we have been working very closely with the county on having that trunk water main integrated as part of their planned works that should, I think, probably take place early 2024.
Okay, so that relieves my fear in terms of any type of development. And you looked at the property that in question right now, but now it looks like they've acquired the lands, further south in that area and that. So I just didn't want to be that we're pinched because all of a sudden we'd have to wait, on Manning in terms of what the county's doing versus putting in abeyance some of the development opportunities that we could be actually doing soon. So if it's 2024, then that's just around the corner.
Yep. And through Your Worship, that would be from County Road 22 to just south of Jamsel. And I believe the subsequent phase is planned for either 25 or 2026. So we would have a trunk water main on Manning, at least down to the CP rail. which would help facilitate development in the Marispa area.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right, any further questions, comments? Then on the recommendation, move Counselor Houston and Counselor Dorner. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And what's that old saying? That's what we're talking about. This is wonderful, wonderful news, you know, that those lines are starting to open up. All right, move on to item C. And that's the, again, Development Services 2023-13 proposed new provincial policy statement summary report. And is that going to be Mr. Jeffries or okay, Mr. Hillman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It will feel like I'm having deja vu from a prior similar report back at I think Bill 23, when we're going to try and do this as quickly as possible. Just the two of us will go through the report. I'll start with the brief introductions. So the provincial policy statement has really been around for a number of years in different iterations, that the province has really taken the lead around setting the stage for how municipalities conduct planning and growth management in Ontario. This government has gone through a review process, and they did a certain level of consultation early last year with the mind to making changes to the provincial policy statement as deemed necessary. And they issued a provincial now planning statement 2023. It's in draft form, but it is out for comment with input sought before June 5th, 2023. Fundamentally, there are 5 pillars under which the province is bringing this forward. One, surprisingly and not surprisingly, is to generate an appropriate housing supply, make land available for development, provide infrastructure to support development, balance housing with resources, and there's an implementation section as well. So the report that we've brought to council, really, we've tried to focus on the changes that would have most impact on Tecumseh. And they center around really 4 fundamental themes: growth management and housing, which Chad will review; employment areas, which I'll review; infrastructure and related planning matters, which I'll review; and then Chad will review some of the agricultural changes that are proposed. So with that in mind, we'll just work through the table that's in the report and just summarize some of the higher order matters, not each individual case. We'd be happy to answer any questions though.
Thank you, Brian. So the first theme of changes with respect to the new 2023 PPS focuses on growth management and housing. Growth management is step 1 in any planning process, and that's why it's critical to get it right. It involves identifying settlement areas, drawing boundaries around them, and then directing the majority of population growth, you know, where people are going to live, work, and play, to those settlement areas, fully servicing those settlement areas and making them compact so that they support things like transit and walkability. And by doing good growth management and identifying your settlement areas, we protect our agricultural areas and our natural heritage areas, which in this area is very critical because we're basically all prime agricultural land. It's very valuable agricultural land, and it's really important to preserve it. It avoids sprawl. And it gives farmers more flexibility to operate. So with respect to the first change we've commented on, it's fairly innocuous to say that the province wants us to plan for a minimum of 25 years as opposed to up to 25 years. And that's something that we agree with, because planning for land use and planning for infrastructure should go hand in hand, and infrastructure planning requires a longer time horizon. So we agree with that change. The second change we've commented on pertains to the definition of housing options. And again, we agree with this change. Housing has changed. It's evolved over the last few decades. And they've expanded the definition to include things such as stacked townhouses, tiny homes, laneway housing, garden suites, and a number of other types of housing. And this is consistent with the approach we've used in the town's official plan. And we've introduced things like stacked townhouses through site-specific zoning bylaw amendments, if you recall the Friday exercise. So we agree with the move to expand the definition of housing options, which is necessary to address diverse housing needs. The province has removed the definition of affordable housing from the PPS. It's something we don't agree with. They've used softer language like, provide appropriate and a full range of housing that meets the market needs. We feel it should remain tied to income, which is how the current definition is structured. And it's now only applicable to inclusionary zoning, which is around protected major transit areas. We don't have any of those. And it's based on 80% of the average resale purchase or average market rent. So this is one of the changes that we don't support. And then finally, with respect to growth management, the province has provided greater flexibility for municipalities to determine where settlement areas can go and when they can be expanded. And again, getting back to that growth management, if you don't apply a little pressure and maintain your settlement areas, you're going to have sprawl, and you're not going to be able to mold your settlement areas so that they're compact and they contain all the elements that make for a complete community. So they've removed the need to do a comprehensive review, which is a well-known planning term. So these things can happen anytime, and we feel that might get abused. So we don't support that. They've encouraged planning authorities to establish density targets for new settlement areas or settlement area expansions, which we do support. Establishing targets is a good thing. However, we'd like them to be more closely tied to promoting efficient land use and supporting active transportation and transit. So we prefer that they be more strategic in their efforts to increase or to establish density targets, and not just across the board.
Just a question on that one. For example, let's take the Sandwich, the Hamlet, the CIP area, more, the Hamlet itself and that. And outside of that, which is right abutting to that, there would be an opportunity for an additional to it. So is this what you're saying, where because it's close proximity to settlement area, and that could be included, even though it's off the boundary, but it's attached, it's close. It wouldn't be a huge exercise, to collect service or put the services and so forth in that area.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. And in some cases, the services exist, and it's just a rounding off exercise. And we get that there are smaller expansions to settlement areas that will benefit from this. And that can be fully justifiable from a planning perspective. It's the larger expansions to settlement areas and where they're not warranted that we feel have the opportunity to be abused.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, to continue, just looking at the employment land section. So just looking at a few of these, our new emphasis, increased emphasis on the protection of employment areas, really. I think the province is making the emphasis that these are areas to be protected, to ensure that they are available for future development and redevelopment for the intended purpose of employment area uses. There are, under section 2.8 on page 132 of the agenda, various policies that again direct authorities to protect and preserve industrial, manufacturing, and warehousing uses. It's sort of a recommitment to not only the definition, but also to the policy itself. Section 2823, it requires planning authorities to actually assess and update the employment areas identified in the official plan to ensure that its designation is appropriate to the planned function of employment areas. It's a shift from the prior PPS, which said you should do that. And as we're all aware, Tecumseh has the benefit of a very significant employment area, which has considerable significance, and ensuring its viability and its growth and continued growth is very important, and one that should be on our radar. So basically, these are the types of things that we're in full agreement with. Ultimately, Mr. Mayor, if we move to infrastructure and related planning, what the PPS is fundamentally saying, and it's been a theme that has been in place before, is placing emphasis on the investment of infrastructure and public services, and they should be prioritized to support strategic growth areas. And these should be your focal areas for growth and development. Now, that's a very interesting policy, and we'll see later how that gets juxtaposed against sort of an alternative approach to that when we get to the agricultural area, but very important area of change in the PPS. And we think it's a reasonable approach. And by way of example, our Tecumseh Road CIP area would be really a candidate for that type of consideration. And in fact, that is the approach the municipality has been taking from a policy perspective and ultimately from a redevelopment perspective. The PPS now encourages its planning authorities to have consultation with school boards. That's generally been a PPS perspective that's always been in place. Some new language: consider and encourage innovative approaches to the design of school and associated childcare facilities, such as schools integrated into high-rise developments in your strategic growth areas and other compact built forms. Totally agree. Consultation should happen. And in our case, we work very closely with the school boards around growth initiatives and siting of future schools. The integration of schools in a high rise as a specific call out in the PPS, not very applicable to our conditions, really. It's not our built form would not typically fit that model. We really do feel that the policy should speak to the notion of schools being integrated as part of neighborhoods and located so they're accessible by the student population through other means other than busing and being driven through active transportation. And that's something where the PPS really has an opportunity, I think, to sort of reimagine the scope of schools as community assets that are integrated in our neighborhoods. But not currently in the PPS. So flipping over to agricultural areas with Chad.
And Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is probably the most significant change to planning at the provincial level. The first issue is with respect to ARUs in the rural area. The proposed policy permits 2 ARUs on prime agricultural lots. Currently, our official plan permits 1 ARU subject to a rezoning. And we believe this policy is contradictory to good planning for a number of reasons. And these reasons will apply to the subsequent issues that I'm going to raise. But just to provide an overview, it can result in conflicting land uses when you have non-farm related dwellings in the rural area. There can be an increased in requests for urban type services into the rural area. It undermines the goal of creating those complete walkable, transit-oriented communities that I was referring to earlier, because it's contrary to good growth management. Every dwelling that's built in the rural area is one that's not paying for the very expensive infrastructure that municipalities have to provide in their urban areas. With respect to lot creations and lot creation and lot adjustments, the proposed policy has removed discouraging lot creation in the rural area, and in effect encourages it and allows for up to 3 non-farm related residential lots on prime agricultural farm lot. And this is probably where we have the biggest concern. I attended a webinar put on by Ontario Farmland Trust last week, and I can tell you that these concerns are shared by the entire planning community and the majority of the farming community that's represented through the Ontario Farmland Trust. It's going to have a profound impact on not only our area, but the entirety of the province. Some rough estimates show that the potential for roughly 19,000 new lots being created in Essex County, 924 of those in Tecumseh, and that's based on very rough estimates that were prepared by the county, but at the very least, it's going to have an impact. We've spent many years protecting the resource and preventing non-farm related residential lot creation in the rural area. We have roughly 1 to 2 lots created per year, and that's through a surplus dwelling lot policy now. So you can see that's going to change. If the province wanted to allow for a type of non-farm related residential lot, we suggest that they reconsider the retirement lot policy, which was removed back in 2005 due to abuse, but perhaps that could be reconsidered with proper policy to allow for bona fide farmers to retire in the area that they're used to living in for their entire lives. But as it stands, creating 3 new lots in the agricultural area through severances is not something that we support. And they take it a step further by saying that we can't create policy that is any more strict than than the provincial planning statement. So they do discourage non-residential lot creation in prime agricultural areas, which we support. And they're making it somewhat easier for non-agricultural uses to expand and locate within the agriculture areas by instead of saying that they're not permitted and subjecting to strict tests, they allow for agricultural impact assessments to be done. And we feel that this requires a bit more clarity before we can agree to that sort of policy change. So those are the summary of our comments, Samir, on the new provincial planning statement.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, just some concluding comments, and we do want to hit a financial consequence. We think that is a real reality for the municipality. So, a number of these changes fit within the program that's already underway here at the municipality from a planning perspective, from a policy perspective, and so on. I really think, though, having reviewed this and contemplated it, the real interesting conflict that seems to be presenting itself is there is a number of policies that are pointing to the importance of infrastructure, complete infrastructure for complete communities, juxtaposed against really a considerable amount of our housing market moving outside of our settlement areas and outside of where we would be spending and exerting historically and really going into the future most of our efforts. We're really about building the community and preserving the resource, and this is really kind of shifting that at times. And in the agricultural policies in particular, it just seems to fly in the face of the prior policies that exist. So if I could, Mr. Mayor, one final observation, there are financial implications, we think. The approach of allowing that type of, that number of non-farm residential development in prime agricultural areas should be approached with really great caution. It does undermine, in our opinion, good growth management and fiscal responsibility. And the really easy example for us to bring forward is the more housing that's built outside of fully serviced settlement areas leads to fewer households that are contributing to the collection of DCs that are intended to fund sanitary sewer infrastructure that the town has actually invested in already. The town has done so with the intent of one day getting that money back, not from the ratepayers, but from new development, which would benefit from that infrastructure and needs it to have development proceed. When you offer an alternative of that type outside of that funding formula, it really causes a problem for the municipality. And it really goes to the heart of building complete communities with full infrastructure, access to parks, walkability, et cetera. So the subject to questions are, we do have a recommendation to receive the report and to it be provided as comments from the municipality through a submission to the EBR. So we're happy to take any questions or comments.
Actually, it's a great report, and I certainly agree with a lot of the comments. And it's ironic that when that whole lot separation retirement lot policy that was done, probably close to 20 years ago, when that was brought forward, and that there was a rationale for that, and it was to eliminate sprawl. And you see the consequences. I won't name the municipality, but you can go down certain roads, and now they're realizing that they can't connect the dots in terms of the servicing and so forth. And there's on septic systems, and they're not on obviously on full municipal services and so forth. But it's almost as if they want to, I'm not saying go, back exactly to that, but it's almost like backsliding a little bit. And for the sake of saying, well, we need X number of housing, in the province, so we're going to allow some of these. But I think you're absolutely right in not agreeing with that, and we should be fulfilling the requirements, and in particular, and it's about sustainability. I think that's what it ends up being. It's all about building communities that are certainly sustainable and avoid financial issues that can come back and haunt us and so forth into the future. And we're seeing that in other communities now, where the servicing of a lot of those additional lands that were part of the sprawl are now creating a real financial crunch with a lot of those municipalities. And certainly fully recommend, this is a great report for us to bring forward. Councillor Higginson.
Thanks very much. And through you, and I'm hearkening back to 2 reports ago when we started talking about trees going up in an area and how much that contributes to environmental sustainability, and not just the loss of farmland, but then replacing that with more concrete and the lack of infrastructure that's out there to kind of help that. That's a major concern. Am I correct that last time we sent a letter about Bill 23, we also included one to our local provincial representative? And could I friendly add that we also do that in this case as well with our remarks? Thank you.
Councillor Job.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of comments, I guess. Thanks for the report, you guys. I just still like some of the language for sure in the new recommendations does change the feel and the culture of the farming community. You know, like when you referenced back to the retirement lots, yeah, not only was that removed from them, also surplus dwelling has a tight language around it, which I think needs more flexibility. I've said that before. I feel like we don't want this urban sprawl out there, but we're also really not accommodating the farmers that are succession exit planning to the best ability that we could be. I know some aging farmers who can still farm and operate their lands, but don't want to live in their 4,000 square foot farmhouse, just want to, and not be a landlord, which is in the language of the official plan. But they want to just be in a smaller residence outside of maybe Tecumseh, or maybe own a Florida house, whatever, and they can't. But yet this new policy is stating, yeah, but we might let y'all take 3 lots off of a farm. It's all very contradictory of what the language was and what it's becoming, and what are their benefits after all those years of farming and being good to the community. And they're just going to put in these different changes that aren't beneficial. But I do want to see, like, if I could, I know there's an email as well that I think individuals can submit their concerns, because some of the residents are asking. So I'm going to encourage some of my farming community to submit their concerns and their interests and what they want to see in the language and in some of the definitions of what they want to see and what they experience. So I'm going to encourage them that. I'm going to do so as well. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Very briefly, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jobin. Very much appreciate the comments. And I think if we could just leave the message, you know, what we tried to do in the report and through the CAO, we had a good discussion about this. I think on this one, we're really saying to the province, please go back to the drawing board. You know, just time out. A housing crisis won't be fixed on the back of the solution that's been brought forward, in our humble opinion. But there are some issues in the farm community that do need to be addressed and reconciled. And I think it's just a little proper dialogue with the associations, with your members, with farmers, and trying to kind of wrestle that down. And let's get the housing put where, you know, to meet our housing needs, let's put it where it should be. So the report's gently just saying, you know, please reconsider, you know, actually not even reconsider. We don't like this. But there is room for improvement in that area.
I mean, it all comes down, you're not going to fix the housing crisis by, you know, on the farms. It's in the urban areas. That's where you're going to fix the problem. Should be automatic. Okay, I'm going to leave it on from now on. Nobody touch it. I mean that. And so with that, and do I have a motion to accept the report and adopt it as presented? Councillor Higginson, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, all in favor? Oppose if any? That's carried. All right, financial services, water, wastewater rates. Mr. Kitsos.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This council report before you serves as a follow-up to administration's presentation of the town's proposed 2023 water and wastewater rate study that was presented at the regular council meeting on April 25, 2023, where the study was made available for review and comment. The review period has concluded with no matters or concerns raised by council or town ratepayers. And as such, administration is seeking council approval of the town's 2023 water and wastewater rate study as presented on April 25 and as currently posted on the town's website. So the report provides some basic information on the town's water and wastewater services, our existing rate structures, some recent history and rationale that has led to our existing rate structures, and considerations given as part of the 2023 study exercise. The foundation of the rate structures being that revenues generated should be sufficient for the self-sustenance of each service. The study projects program costs, both operating and capital, extending out 10 years and incorporates estimates for growth based on capital planning and workshops conducted in the spring of 2022. The study recommends the continuation of the existing rate structures, which are a combination of a fixed charge rate and a volumetric charge rate for both water and wastewater. The volumetric charge rate for water is a decreasing block rate structure that includes 2 block rates, providing for a discounted rate for large consumers. The volumetric charge rate for wastewater is a uniform rate structure that imposes a single volumetric rate for all customers, with a single exception allowed for a discount to a large food processing facility in town. So the study projects annual rate increases of 3% for both water and wastewater rates for the timeframe of the study. However, it's important to note that actual user rates are established during the town's annual budget exercise, where administration will reference this study and its projections, as well as actual revenues and expenditures experienced and reserve fund balances. So if there are any questions, I could take those now.
One question, 40-60, is that now, was that always the goal?
The 40-60 split, originally it was a 33-60
Yes.
or 30-70. And then what we found was whether it was that rate structure itself or just other circumstances, the consumption trends of users declined considerably, such that we're not meeting our revenue targets. So it was difficult to fund our program and our reserves. So we moved to the 40-60 split. So 40% of our user revenues coming from fixed charges. And that seems to be, when we look at comparables across the province, that seems to be where more communities are going to.
Okay, so that seems to be the split. I mean, so in other words, conservation, water conservation is working.
Definitely when there's a cost to it, yes.
Something to remember, Any further questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through your mayor, Tom, in terms of the billing, the bulk rate, I know a resident did inquire and asked about the city of Windsor. They have a summer rate for water, whether it be gardening or their grass or filling their pools. Are you aware, does the city have a discounted water residential rate? And do we have that? I don't believe we do, but I wasn't sure if the city does.
Through the mayor to the deputy. So there used to be summer rates. There are no longer summer rates, and the city discontinued that actually prior to us discontinuing that maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Good news, we're still about on average $200 per household over the course of the year, reasonable. So good negotiation, whoever negotiated the last water deal, or Luke started it, and Brian and so forth. Yes. Excellent. Okay, no further questions or comments, and a motion to adopt the report is presented. Councilor Houston, Councilor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, legislative clerk services, regulation of the e-scooters during the pilot program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Back at the April 25th meeting, council received report CRS 2306 regarding a e-scooter pilot program for the provision of shared or rental services in certain designated areas of the town. Council then at the subsequent regular meeting, May 9th, passed bylaw 2023-057, which authorized the provision of e-scooter rental services by Bird Canada, Inc. And that was for the limited period commencing May 23rd and ending September 30th. However, in order to give legal effect to this program or service, the town is further required to formally pass a bylaw permitting the use of e-scooters and opting in to the province's pilot project. And this pilot project is identified through Ontario Regulation 389-19, which is a regulation made under the Highway Traffic Act. So the proposed bylaw that council has before it, 2023-062, which is actually a bylaw to amend the town's traffic bylaw to allow for the participation and to provide regulations on e-scooters during the pilot program, is before council. And this project, the provincial project itself, runs until November 27th, 2024, unless the province ends up rescinding it earlier. There's numerous municipalities across the province that are participating, and it's been at various points in which some of the other municipalities have opted in. The regulation itself, 389-19, essentially provides that it is up to each municipality to decide whether it wishes to engage in the pilot program. And so long as the requirements of the regulation and the Highway Traffic Act are otherwise being met, the municipality has discretion as to the extent and the parameters of the town's participation in the pilot program. If the pilot program across the province is deemed successful, then it's certainly possible that the provincial government will enact amendments to the Highway Traffic Act to permanently authorize the use of e-scooters in the province. So proposed bylaw 23062 in front of council applies to the use of e-scooters, whether privately owned or whether, or relating to scooters that are commercially related, part of a shared services program. The proposed bylaw as drafted could allow the potential use of e-scooters in various identified areas of the town on such shared roadways, potentially some sidewalks, trails, and multi-use pathways, if applicable, as may be identified within those areas. However, for the purpose of the initial pilot program, being the program that we referred to with Bird Canada, which runs until September 30th, the identified areas of the town where the e-scooters will be permissible will largely only be on those trails, parks, and pathways identified. And I believe it's attachment 1 to this report, and then Schedule A to the bylaw itself. Certainly, as council approaches September 30th, it may decide to not move forward with the pilot program. It may not, it may decide not to move forward possibly with the shared services and the scooters being provided by Bird Canada. Or it may determine that it wishes to participate at least to the end of the province's pilot project, which again is November 27th of 24. And certainly at that point, the schedule to the bylaw, council could decide that it's happy with the identified areas and the identified paths and trails permitting e-scooters at this point, or it could amend certainly at that point if it wants to consider possible extension to other areas of the municipality. So again, the bylaw itself, I'm not going to go into each of the provisions. It is largely drafted straight out of the requirements, again, of the regulation itself, 389-19. The bylaw outlines rules of general usage and safety rules, a variety of other regulations relating to minimum age of 16, mandating the use of helmets under the age of 18, no e-scooters shall be operated on a sidewalk unless specifically authorized by signage, restrictions dealing with maximum speeds, requirements relating to braking systems. E-scooters have to have sound devices, a bell, a horn in order to notify cyclists, pedestrians, or others of its approach, and parking. No e-scooter will be parked anywhere but designated parking areas. No e-scooters will be parked in such a way that obstructs pedestrian paths of travel, driveways, roadways, or in any other way that obstructs garbage removal or other services of the town. And then the last note in the report is that there'll be a review of the town's pilot program as we're heading into fall. And certainly part of that review will be collecting information because, as I mentioned, many other municipalities are simultaneously running their pilot programs. So we're hoping to obtain information from other municipalities related to their assessment. I think a couple of the bigger municipalities are providing opportunities for further public input. So a lot of that information on assessments and some of the pros and cons will be collected as part of our work towards reporting back to council on this. So the recommendations before council is to receive 2023-16 report this evening, authorize the town to participate in the province's e-scooter pilot program, direct administration to advise the Ministry of Transportation of such participation, and to give consideration of 3 readings to bylaw 2023-062, which again is the bylaw to amend the town's traffic bylaw to provide for the provision of e-scooters during this pilot project. And if council has any questions. Thank you.
All right, any questions or comments? Move the report.
I'll be happy to move the report.
Thank you. And supported by Councilor Dorner. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Just to go ahead.
Thank you. One quick question and a comment. A question to Ms. Geniak. The boundary based on the pilot, are they like golf carts? Do they stop working when you go outside the boundary or?
Correct, GPS.
Like GPS? Okay. Thank you. And also, without saying, I want to thank our CAO. I know last year, the mayor and I attended FCM and we got a good spiel on it. And we brought the report, and I think it was the first week of June, and we were all excited. We want it. And she said, trust me, we'll get to it. And lo and behold, we did not miss a beat. We got the report. The pilot is here and we can get the season and provide this amenity for our residents to use. So hopefully it'll be successful, but want to thank administration for getting this work done along with Mr. OJ with the report. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. All right. Last but not least, Public Works. I thought we'd be able to sneak one without Public Works this time, but it's only one though. But so anyway, it's only one. It's only money. PWES 2023-41 Active Transportation Fund. Very important. Multi-use trail, Les Moras to Little River, award of engineering consulting services. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Mayor and members of council. As part of the 2023 to 2027 PWES Capital Works Plan, council had approved the allocation of project funds for this project, totaling $4.7 million. More recently, request for proposal was posted on the town's bid and tenders account and closed on April 20th earlier this year. The town did receive 7 proposals from consultants. The RFPs were reviewed by the selection committee, which comprised the town staff members, and evaluated each proposal on its own merit according to the evaluation criteria, which includes understanding of the scope, proposed implementation plan, relevant project experience, project manager, project staff, contract administrator, as well as fees. RC Spencer Associates, Inc. Was ranked #1 by the selection committee. The engineering consulting services include preliminary design, topographical surveys, detailed design, preparation of the tender documents, tender services, contract administration, and inspection during construction. RC Spencer's proposal of $210,000 is below the budgeted amount for the engineering consulting services for this project. The report in front of you today has 2 recommendations. The first, it is recommended that council award the engineering consulting services for the multi-use trail on Les Bronce Road and Little River Boulevard in the amount of $210,000, excluding HST, to RC Spencer Associates, Inc. and that bylaw 2023-64 be given first, second, third, and final reading to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement satisfactory and form to the town solicitor with RC Spencer Associates Incorporated. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Barney. Any questions or comments? Hearing none on the report. Move Councillor Higginson, Councillor Tonio support. All in favor? Oppose if any, that is carried. Bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For first and second reading this evening, bylaw 2023-061, Castlegate Towers, Inc. Development Agreement, bylaw 2023-062, e-scooter bylaw, bylaw 2023-063, East Town Line Drain, and bylaw 2023-064, Tender Award Multi-Use Trail. And as well, if council's desire this evening, that all of those referenced bylaws, except for bylaw 2023-063 on the East Town Line Drain, be also considered for third reading this evening.
All right, two readings. Move Councillor Tonio, Councillor Dorner support. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, opposed, that's carried. Three readings are available, except for, I lost my spot here. East Town Line Drain, yeah, number 3. So that would be 63. Move Deputy Mayor Becchetti, Councillor Houston, support. 3 readings, all in favor, opposed, that's carried. Okay, unfinished business. No unfinished business, any new business? Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to take a moment to just express a little bit of disappointment with the lack of communication from the county on the 42 projects that they were doing. You know, not that if we would have known about them ahead of time, it would have alleviated any of the traffic. But I feel that a lot of calls from residents who are upset. And I believe the fact was that we were never told about the projects when they were happening. So I know there's been a lot of discussion with, you know, yourself and Deputy Warden, Deputy Mayor, and administration with the county. But it's our first meeting since, you know, the projects have started. So just wanted to, you know, express that. And I know, you know, really there's nowhere but up, and hopefully, you know, in the future, we will have better communication and they will notify us when those projects are going on.
Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just to share with Councillor Houston, the mayor and I did raise this at the county council meeting, and they did take ownership of that one particular project, and they had a whole slew of, you know, things that they're going to be doing, as well as making sure that the communication with the lower tier, there's a contact person that when they do these projects, that there'll be that communication. So it was anonymously, but again, the good thing is that there's a lot of work, a lot of construction out there. People are frustrated. We all received a lot of calls, but they assured us that moving forward, that they're going to improve on that regard.
Yes, the other thing I wanted to bring up is on Baseline Road. We're still having trucks as recently as yesterday. These are semis, 80,000-pound trucks going on a B-rated road. And I noticed, I stand to be corrected, but I did not see a sign on Baseline that says this is a B-rated road. And if it's not, it should be. And so if we can get Public Works to look at that. I did mention it to the county to have a conversation with the contractor and, you know, in the detours, but nobody really bothers. And it's pretty hard to enforce B-rated road if there's no signage. And so, and the other is maybe if we can make contact with Department of Transport to basically at times have somebody there monitoring those trucks. I've seen them where 2 or 3, and the traffic's fairly heavy on Baseline right now because of 42 being closed. And it's going to create, close calls. And because what's happening is a good example of that. I was following a tractor trailer that was making his left-hand turn, and two cars behind me decided, well, he's making a left-hand turn. I'm going to take the shoulder and move, but the tractor trailer itself couldn't make the left-hand turn. So guess what? The person here decided, I'm going to make my left turn now to move out. And these cars were zooming by the tractor trailer. I could just see it, there. So it is important for us to, put the signage there, because that road's not even wide enough for them to turn in. And as you can see, if there's cars there, they gotta, and there could be 10, 12 of them in a row. They all have to back up to let that tractor trailer in. And they were coming down the 12th concession as well. They just finished paving it. And these roads are not made to handle 80,000-pound trucks. And so I know the county made them aware of that, but you talk to the contractor and they do their thing. But the other important piece, I said, anytime major projects in the community, that involve the county, an adjacent municipality, forget the email, forget the website, meet in person with the responsible lower tier directors to set the course. Nobody knows the road pattern better than the local municipality. And that's why it was such a disaster that day when we weren't notified and people were just scrambling. And then tractor trailers were coming down, and I don't blame them, but they had no recourse but to take baseline road, because you can't back them up back to the 401. So even on the 401, it should have been Bell River Road, or at least Puce, which would be County Road 25, should have been their road to move on to the bypass. So big lessons to be learned here. And in particular, we're going to have the same issue soon enough. Once they get close to L'Esperance Road, they're going to close that intersection and so forth. So not as impactful as Manning, but all the folks that live in that area don't have many opportunities, right, to be able to go. So anyway, that's my 5-minute vent on that area. And I got pictures to prove it, by the way, for the trucks. Any further new business? No new business. All right, I need a confirmatory bylaw for the proceedings of this evening. Councilor Houston, Councilor Jobin, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any notices of motion? Hearing none. Next meeting, Tuesday, June 27th, 5:30 is the quarter revision, East Town Line Drain. 6:30 is the public council meeting, ZBA south side of County Road 22, west of Sylvester Drive, and 7 p.m. the regular council meeting. No further business, then adjournment's in order. Councilor Houston, Councilor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. This meeting is now adjourned.